Arcee has been watching the pattern of attacks on her fellow Autobots with great interest. They are savage and devastating, yes, but they are also random. What's more, the Decepticons have been nowhere to be seen. Her tactical processors tell her that the Decepticon forces are in chaos, and just as concerned about the Predacon threat as the Autobots are. That's why, when she finds herself tracking Ripclaw to a hidden cave deep in the Canadian Rockies, she transmits the location directly to the Decepticons. Why should the Autobots risk themselves against the Predacons when the Decepticons are probably more willing to do it for them? Greetings YouTube! This is Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1 bringing you a review of the most recent Arcee mold, Beast Hunters Arcee. Thus officially re-completing my Arcee Harem, not counting the Revenge of the Fallen mold, because I don't have to keep repeating how much I hate those things. So this is the newest form of Arcee. She never appeared like this on the show, but as part of the last wave of Transformers Prime toys, the Beast Hunter line. It's, her done up in the crazy, spiked up decos that we saw in that wave. She gets off easier than Wheeljack or Bumblebee, who are covered with tons of extraneous spikes, which in some cases actually limited articulation. But her new color scheme is absolutely nuts. She has this really cool silvery blue mixed in with her color palette, along with some actual pink. Yes, her head crest, which was left silver on the original mold to this toy, has been done up in a really nice hot pink. And if you look closely, some of the plastic used on other parts of her body, like on her midriff and her forearms, are actually a very faint pink in themselves. It's actually a really subtle, almost organic looking hue, which I suppose is perfectly fitting for the theme of the Beast Hunters line. Comparing Beast Hunters Arcee to the original Prid Arcee, the most obvious changes are in her color palette, of course, but if we get in closer, we find that there's actually a significant amount of mold changes. The most obvious is, of course, her backpack. As you can see, the wing design has been changed to look more like fins. And if you look here at the wheel, where the original Prid Arcee had a long thing covering the wheel, here only half of the wheel's covered. More on that in a moment. We also see she has new fins added to her skirt. I'm going to call her skirt. And she has much longer pipes sticking out of the back of her heels than the original one does. So, yeah. I mean, actually, if you look at her calves, it looks like they're actually made out of 3 different pieces of plastic. Whereas on the original one, it looks like it's only 2. Either that's a really sharp paint job on that cap there, or it's another piece of plastic stuck on top. But still, this looks like an entirely new molded piece, as it has these new intakes which the original mold does not have. Even the arms, I thought that the forearm pieces were simply cast in a different plastic, but no, they're actually significantly thicker than the original Prid's arms. Let me just get them up and out of the way so you can see them side by side. See, as you can see, besides being significantly thinner, the wrist cuff is slightly different too. Even their heads have, even Arcee's head has a new mold. If you look, you see the original Arcee had like these sideburn fins framing her face, while the new one, she looks a lot more like she's wearing a helmet. Her face, picked out in white paint, is a little bit more recessed, and her lips are a little bit more pronounced. Yeah, it's just a new head mold. You can even see how the fins have her hair bits have kind of been sculpted to look a little bit more like fins, whereas on the original Arcee, she, you know, it's just a sharp point. Yeah. Okay, that's enough of the comparison. Let's get back to talking about the Beast Hunters mold by itself. Beast Hunters Arcee can, of course, still wield the forearm blade that the original one came with, but the weapon that she comes packaged with is this enormous crossbow, which, if you have it looking in its crossbowish position, if you set it down, it's taller than she is. And that's not even as long as it can get, because you can straighten it out and make it much taller than she is. And it has 2 firing missiles, spring-loaded, and they go a pretty good distance. These are... well, that time it stuck, but my finger caught it. Ah, why you gotta prove me wrong? Well, you saw how far that first one went, much farther. So yeah, these are strong spring-firing missiles, and if you look at the molding, you see the front of it. Let's move Arcee off to the side. Look at the molding. The front of it is actually the rest of her front wheel cover, and it almost looks like it has a face with teeth and eyes. That's kind of cool looking. The handle is in 2 pieces, which is articulated. This is so that you can open it up and slide it over her hand, or rather through her hand, which looks really far open, but actually does have a simple circle in the middle that can grip this thing just fine. Then you close it up, and she's wielding a giant crossbow. A ridiculously giant crossbow. I think this is actually an homage to her Energon figure. Remember, it had that gigantic crossbow made out of translucent red parts that was significantly bigger than she was. So yeah, it's the same thing, except she's deluxe sized. And there is one more little thing about it. Remember how I was pointing at the wheel? Well, you can flip the wheel up, and actually, hold on just a second. I like to refer to this as her anti-aircraft battle mode, because you can totally just plug the thing into the wheel on her back and position it over her head, so she can just totally just fire at anybody above her, or she could just be she could actually like be hacking on a console and still be perfectly armed, like here I am, just checking my email, oh, what's that? Predacons above me? Boom. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is entirely intentional, but it looks absolutely crazy, and I totally love it. And this is a perfectly valid display mode for her, even if you just gotta get her leaning slightly forward so that her center of gravity remains balanced. But it totally freaking works! I love this! This is awesome! Alright, so if I were to bring up one negative point on this particular version of Arcee, I would say that maybe the paint application is a little bit sloppy in places, like here on her crest, the pink kind of breaks down a little bit towards the tip, and her wrist dealies at the front, they look like the paint kind of scraped off a little bit. You know, like they were too impatient after they painted it and they put it in the package too soon. Some of it rubbed off. She also has that the marbling detailing that a lot of Beast Hunters figures have. It's visible on some of her plastics. It becomes more apparent in vehicle mode, which I'll show you in just a moment. But I think the biggest knock against her is that a lot of her extra details and paint apps are done inside out. Like, if you look at her fins, they're just ordinary blue on this side, but if you turn it around this way, it has this really cool silver fin color scheme, which you don't really see when you view her from the front or side. You only see them when you view her from behind, which isn't a way to display a figure. The same thing happens to her boots. She has these really cool silver painted details in the spikes on her wheels, but when her legs are transformed, they're on the inside edges. So the outside just kind of presents all these black hollow spaces, or blue hollow spaces. Hollow spaces. You know, the hollow spaces are supposed to be on the inside edges of the figure, not the outside. But yeah, that's really the only knock I have against her. I'm not really going to do the transformation on camera because it's pretty much almost exactly the same as the original Prid version of the mold. There is a little bit of a difference though. One, the moving parts here are a little smoother. The arms on the original Arcee, this slot here on the inside edge of the forearm, the arm is supposed to go like this, and that'll peg into her hip, making the side of her motorcycle. In this version of the mold, you turn it this way, so the hole goes into the peg instead. And it just doesn't quite peg together as well as the original Prid version of the mold. We'll come back in a moment and I'll show you her vehicle mode. In vehicle mode, we once again see that delightful Mad Maxian sensibility that goes into creating these things. And, well, I gotta say, this is one of the first Transformers motorcycle toys I've seen that can actually roll around. Probably because it's propped up by the kickstand, and even if it flips past the kickstand, it gets caught by the handle of the crossbow, which is just off to the side of the fender. So yeah, if we see Arcee, her theme is obviously very aquatic. It's a very fishy looking alt mode with big fins on the side, the top. She looks very shark-like, I gotta say. It's like if Arcee were to transform into a Beast Wars character, she would be a shark. And if you look, you see that tucked underneath the front of the car, you even have a little face for her vehicle mode. It consists of the weapon, of the crossbow weapon, but you know, it's a very beastly little vehicle mode. It's really trying to be a shark. Not quite as much as Sharkticon Megatron, which says so right in the title that he's Sharkticon Megatron, but you know, it's very shark-like. You can even bring out the handles of the crossbow to, you know, be like if you want to kneecap some people as you drive by and cut off a few legs. So yeah, like I was saying, the new deco and paint job really enhances the vehicle mode this time, making her look really nice. I like this. You can even see there's some new orange parts picked out, like here on the front of her vehicle, and here on the side there's a little bit of orange in that intake. And as you can see on the pink parts there, see how she has like some purple plastic marbled in there. I don't really like the marbling, but it's kind of one of the features of this line. You can also see there's some darker blue marbled in there. Yeah, the only problem I have is that this motorcycle mode doesn't peg into itself quite as well as the original version. Yeah, it's hard to believe that these are two versions of the same character. Oh, completely random. Notice the blue that this Arcee is made out of compared to this. They used the same color blue that they used on the first edition Arcee for this Arcee. I had to work in a cameo of my favorite Transformer somewhere. So yeah, it's kind of weird that they used first edition Arcee's blue instead of the, you know, Robots in Disguise, because this is Robots in Disguise, even if it is Beast Hunters, Robots in Disguise. Listen to me talk. But yeah, like I said, she doesn't really peg into herself as well. Like if you see here, you have a really secure connection where the forearms stick onto the sides, and then these peg in really tightly onto her legs, and even though her hands stick out the back, you can fold them into themselves, so you can't really notice her fingers too much. But since on this version of the mold, those arms are supposed to turn the other way, they just kind of rest against the side of the car. They don't really peg into it, which is a bit of a problem. Also, her hands, because of the molding of her wrist, they bend that way. So you can have them stick out of her alt mode, which looks stupid, or you can just try and tuck them in underneath, but it doesn't really work. She is a motorcycle with hands sticking out around her back wheel. I don't know why they changed the transformation of her arms, because it did nothing but hurt the figure in this mode. Also, this might just be mold degradation and not a common problem, but yeah, these fins, they don't peg in. Again, they're just kind of resting there. And it doesn't help that this hinge is a little bit loose, so that just comes off. I'm sure that this is probably not a problem that every Transformer will have, but mine does, and it's really distracting. I don't like to keep this, even though all these paint decals are brought out in vehicle mode, I don't really like to keep it in this mode because I'm frustrated by how it doesn't like to peg together. Also, this gigantic crossbow forming essentially the wheel's fender means that if you don't have the weapon included, then her front wheel looks suspiciously bare. And the vehicle mode just doesn't look right without the weapon. And that, you know that's a pet peeve of mine. I don't like it when the Transformer's weapon, especially if it's a ridiculously oversized weapon, is a significant part of the vehicle mode. It's the same problem I had with the 2007 movie Arcee. Where her giant crossbow formed this part. I mean, it's not an essential part of the motorcycle for one, so it's okay with that. It's just that the motorcycle looks very wrong without it. So you lose the weapon, you lose a very important part of the vehicle mode's aesthetic. So, my final verdict for Beast Hunters Arcee. If you have the original RID Arcee or first edition Arcee, and you aren't really concerned with getting every possible mold of the character, you might want to skip her. Engineering wise, she's not really significantly different from the original Arcee, and you might even argue that there's some detrimental parts since she doesn't peg together quite as well in vehicle mode. But if you always kind of wanted to see if you always wanted to see a Transformer of Rudo from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time might look like, then this is your girl. Because she is, she's like a siren. She's like a motorcycle siren, a mystical fish lady who's cool. Although I think sirens are part bird, and I don't really see any bird aspect to her. But she definitely has a nice shark-like aesthetic going with her. Plus, if you really like the Energon toy and that ridiculously oversized crossbow, that's totally homaged in this particular toy, because she has this gigantic crossbow which is as big as she is, and it has two very nice spring-loaded missiles, which is always good to see it. I like seeing spring-loaded missiles as opposed to pressure missiles like what Springer has. But yeah, she's a really great figure. I love her. I'm happy I got her. I don't feel like she's too redundant, and I would totally recommend her if you really love Arcee or just like the spiky Mad Maxian bestial appeal of the Beast Hunters line. I think characters like Wheeljack went way over the top with the aesthetic, but Arcee really strikes a nice balance. I love her. This has been Toy Customizer Wakeangel2K1, and I am signing off.